Today I want to discuss important topic about Muslim religion, which is very aggressive stance toward almost all, or rather all, existing today's religion. Because we have information that on Yom Kippur, which was 2 days ago, and this is the holiest holiday of the Jews, the Arab Muslim attacked synagogue in Manchester in Great Britain, and he wanted to murder all people in the congregation. Um, Screaming that this is the revenge against Palestine war, Palestine genocide, and he even have a vest or something, some kind of device which he supposed to detonate, but the device wasn't working, and he managed to murder one person. Another was killed by a police officer, and he also died. So we see that from this perspective, that Muslims are attacking, killing, and murdering people of other religions without with reasons or without reasons. So, for example, he has the reason. His reasons was that there is a war in Palestine, there is a genocide, Palestinians are dying, and he was an Arab of Syrian origin. But of course, every murderer and every person who wants to commit mass murder or even a single murder will have some argumentations for it. And this heinous attack was also disturbing because he chose the holiest side of the Jewish calendar, so he was aware that the biggest and the most important holiday is Yom Kippur in October, and he also attacked attacked holy site, holy place. Temples, generally temples of all religions, are holy, and they are considered, let's say, something which is holy and should not be attacked in any circumstances. But Muslims don't care about that. For example, we have a Sri Lankan attack in 2019, 18, and they entered to Catholic churches with bombs on them, detonating inside Catholic temples on the holiest day of Christians. So it is the day of resurrection of Christ. And Holy Sunday, Resurrection of Christ, in April, in March, this holy festival, or this holy this holy event is taking place. So we see that Muslims are behaving really irrationally, and also in a very barbaric way, because they not only attack, let's say, soldiers, policemen, gathering of young and tough to kill men, but they just want to destroy, kill, and evaporate everything which is the weakest, because this is the weakest. This is the also the example, not only their savagery but their barbarism, that they are murdering people inside temples when they are weak, when they should not supposed to be attacked. And they even do it as a minority in Great Britain, when we have like 9% of Muslims. And this is the Christian land, the Protestant country, and they still attacking other minorities and other religions, in this case Jewish minority. So we see that Muslims are complete out of this place. So they behave in such irrational way that it is really even hard to describe their behavior, because the Muslim world and the Islam was at the top stories of all magazines and all the world when suicide bombers from Saudi Arabia, Arab men between 20 and 30 years old, kidnapped civilian passengers planes and attacked Twin Towers, Pentagon, and other buildings in the United States. They managed to murder maybe 3,000 something people, mostly Christians, but their goal was to murder much, much more, because they suspect that in Twin Towers there will be many more people and many more casualties and deaths will occur. And of course, this cowardly tactic didn't achieve anything. It achieved something completely opposite, because they attacked as a civilians, and in Islam, even in the core concept of just war in Islam, of jihad, is that you cannot pretend that you are a civilian when you are attacking others, and you cannot just attack innocent people. You need to attack, let's say, soldiers, guerrillas, or people participating openly in the war. You cannot just kill civilians because you consider them to be a threat. And this is, of course, important, because Islam as a religion began as a religion of war. There in Saudi Arabia, Arabs were polytheists. They believed in many gods, and Muhammad, as a prophet of this religion, as a founder of this religion, with Arabs who agreed with his message, took weapons, and they conquered those lands, and they killed those Arabs who disagreed with them. So Arabs who were polytheists, and Islam was spreading through the sword. We even have a very topic in elementary schools, great Arabian conquests in the 6th and 7th century. But this war, even in the past, even in those early ages of medieval times, they Arabs knew that war need to be conducted in certain concrete way, just because it cannot become a slaughterhouse. It cannot be just a slaughter of people, because they knew that maybe in other times their wars will not be so good for them, and they will be defeated by the opponent side. So they wanted to be treated by the opponent side as they treated the opponents. And in this case, we see that in the past it was impossible for a Muslim to just murder people just casually because he thinks that it is just justifiable. And here in modern times, we see those mostly young men. This man was quite young, 30 something years old, but they are mostly or often some they are like felons. They are like they did something against the law. So he was accused of rape, and he also did some minor let's say felonies. And he was also very fat, very ugly looking, really. In a way, when you see his face and his posture, he was rather ugly guy, even disgusting in some way. And he decided to be holy warrior. And holy warrior for Muslims those days is that you can kill people because you want to kill them, or you murder them because you want to murder them. And and even at the beginning of the Islam, there was the rule that, for example, temples, monasteries, because Muslims were conquering at the beginning of their conquest Christian lands, Byzantine Empire lands, and they, for example, conquered the Holy Land of Christians, Jerusalem and this area. And second campaign were against the Persian Empire. But even then, they just didn't slaughter people because they want to slaughter them, and they didn't kill them in their weakest points. So, for example, they didn't just murder all monks in the monastery, all priests and all people congregated in the churches. Nevertheless, they destroyed many temples of different religions, because consequently they conquered all North Africa, most of the lands of the Byzantine Empire. So many, maybe hundreds of thousands Christians were killed by the Muslims, and then they of course expanded into today's Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, killing many Buddhists and Hindus. So they murder people from all major important religions existing today. And they are doing this consequently in our times, but then it was something more than just a murder. It was to create a culture, to create a great empire, to for example observe other cultures and create their own unique culture with many achievements. But right now Muslims don't have any achievements. When we see, for example, at the something like a passport power or GDP, Muslim countries are at the bottom of the list, and specifically Arab countries are at the bottom of the list, because mostly the earlier African countries were the poorest. But because of the wars in Yemen, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, all those countries are now at the bottom of the bottom. For example, Pakistan didn't have war or civil war between, for example, Sunnis and Shias, but still they are so fanatically degenerated that they have many suicide bombers, mostly young men, teenagers and young men, blowing themselves up in the mosques of Shias or Sunnis, which they don't agree with. And they have no authority of any kind, and priesthood of Muslim priesthood is aware of this, that they use those barbaric, very brutal tactics without any sense and without any consideration, because they only chose targets which are usually weak, which are not military, which are not soldiers, and they think that they are holy warriors of jihad, which is completely degeneration of the early conquests of Muslims. That they just didn't kill women, children, civilians, or people praying in the temples, because right there in Great Britain, the Jews were praying on their holiest of holidays. And of course Muslims are 1.6 billion people or even more, and Jews are like 17 million. So it's completely, the fight is completely uneven, because Jews didn't create an empire, and they could, because for example Israeli army is quite capable of conquering nearby lands, but they just focused on their native lands of Israel. And still Muslims are murder. They are almost like a cult. For example, Hamas attacked Jews, they slaughtered hundreds of them, and now they are accusing the victim that the victim want to defend itself, and they accusing the victim of having to prepare a genocide. The Hamas has in their unique status that the Jews are the occupiers. They don't even use the term Jews often. They use the term occupiers, and this is of course the lie, because the native people of those specific lands in Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria and Israel are the native people, and Arabs conquered those lands in seventh, let's say late sixth, seventh, early 7th century of our age, or common era. So they attack people who are not even aware that they are being attacked, and they don't even want to acknowledge this. For example, when there was this attack on Yom Kippur, there was they act almost like a mob. There were on those same day there were protests against against war in Palestine. But those protests were not for Palestinians or for Arabs generally or for Muslims generally. They were done to to change the topic of the discussion, because all Muslims knew that some savage, barbaric psychopath wanted to murder some Jews, and all of them knew that. So they were prepared. They did a campaign. They did protests and so on, without any accountability of their own inhuman, horrific behavior. And after that, they accused the victim that she is so bold to defend herself. Yes, for example, I saw because we are close to second anniversary of slaughtering the Jews on October, and I saw this slaughterhouse, and it was purposely slaughtered just for fun of the slaughter. When I hear Arabs, because you know, you don't have to watch this concrete slaughter of the Jews and know that Arabs are barbaric savages. You can, for example, focus on a war in Iraq between Sunnis and Shias, very brutal. You have documentary movies about mutilated bodies, terrifying pictures of mutilated bodies in those concrete. I don't know if this Muslim was a Shia or Sunni, completely mutilated, barbaric behavior, like for example giving people a cold water and having under those cold waters a massive explosive bomb or something like that, just to kill as many as you can, because this hatred between Sunnis and Shias are the main reason why in Muslim countries there are so many wars, most of them unknown, most of them without any specific details of these horrific acts of violence. But everyone who is focused on this region, or know the Arab culture and the Arab and Muslim culture in general, they are all aware of this, but they are just not talking about this. Yes, so the purpose of this talking about Israel and its atrocities is not only to accuse the victim of being a perpetrator, and show that Jews are really not the victim but the perpetrator, but also to not discuss about the topics of barbarism and brutality of Muslim countries, Muslim rulers, and Muslims in general. So and all of this is without any, because Muslims have also a problem that they have no authority whatsoever, because in Muslims world there were times of caliphate, but for example we have four distinct unique caliphs called Rashidun, or so they are the most benevolent people after the Prophet Muhammad for Muslims from theological point of view, and three of them, so Omar, Uthman, and Ali, they were all murdered by Muslims or by someone close to a Muslim world. So all those, from four of them, three of those holiest men, they were murdered by Muslims themselves or someone close to the Muslim world. And right now they because sometimes priests of Muslims are talking that this is forbidden in Islam, this is forbidden in Islam, this is forbidden in Islam, but no Muslim is asking them about that, because every Muslim has their own interpretation of the Quran. And this is of course very dangerous, because every one of us can have individual interpretation of our own specific religion. That's why the church is important, the hierarchy is important, to show us that only theological people from the church, priests, cardinals, archbishops, can interpret what is our religion and what should we do and what should we not do. But in Islam we have also the priests. They are called imams or mullahs or sheikhs, but often they have no authority whatsoever, because this sheikh is or this mullah is talking about that, and that mullah is talking about that in a different perspective and in a different reason. So it's completely out of touch, because for example Arab mullahs or Palestinian mullahs saying that suicide bombers in Palestine are justifiable, but outside of Palestine they are not justifiable. So you just chose what is the best for you at this specific time and place. And this is not the conduct of the religion, because religion is just not a supermarket. When there is a promotion you chose this product, when there is a promotion you chose that product, and so on, and you only talking about religion or invoking God or invoking Quran when it is most feasible and well for you and for your interpretation of concrete situation. And young Muslim men, mostly between 20 and 40 years old, they are doing exactly this thing that Hamas fighters, mostly we have an interview with them recorded by Israelis, and you see that they completely don't know what they are talking about. They are like very simple, primitive guys between 20 and 40 years old, not understanding anything. Because when Hamas attacked, they attacked like in the force of 3,000 men, and 100, half of them were killed, and half of them returned to Gaza with hostages. But this behavior, they don't even understand that this behavior will not bring any fruit to the Islam world whatsoever, because it cannot, because these barbaric tactics and these barbaric behaviors, they will be repeated, let's say in schools, in hospitals, in different agendas of Muslim life. So if you just choosing the weakest point of your enemy when you attack him, you cannot do anything. When you, for example, want to war, you need to participate in the war like Russians did in Ukraine, that many soldiers are killed. You need to not attack only civilian infrastructure, even though Russians do it, but they are just stronger. They are so strong that they can attack civilian infrastructure on Ukraine, but you need to conquer lands, rule those lands, have specific concept of war, of conduct of the war, because right now the devices of the war, the weapons are so dangerous for human life that you need to have rules how war is conducted. Because in the past, for example, when you were let's say killing people with arrows or with swords or with spears, you can, for example, kill, I don't know, one soldier, one civilian, two soldiers, two civilians, let's say 10 soldiers, 10 civilians. But right now with a gun, with machine guns, with drones, with tanks, with artillery, you can murder, slaughter hundreds, thousands of people, mostly civilians, because they cannot shelter, they are not aware that drones are flying over them and so on. And Muslims are doing those terror attacks mostly on civilians, because civilians are weak, civilians are not aware that they need to be protected, that they need to, I don't know, have weapon or have some kind of a shield or something like that. And this is even worse for all ummah, because Muslims want to have an ummah in this world. So one Muslim community, one big country of Muslim countries. But it is not possible because they are so cowardly that they cannot even conceptualize modern war. They just use those terror attacks on someone who is not suspecting them. Like for example, you have this slaughterhouse of Jews, and they are attacking people dancing on a festival because most of the most batch of victims were from this festival when they are flying on gliders and just shooting everybody. So okay, so you are a barbarian, you are a psychopath, you are infantile, but you didn't achieve anything. You just murder people who were dancing and were happy, and they were vulnerable. So you could attack them because you chose them in their weakest point. Let's imagine Irish people fighting for Northern Ireland and attack loyalists in Northern Ireland when they have their holiday, their festival. Great Britain would just evaporated all Irish people from Northern Ireland, from whole Ireland. They would just took them to some different islands, and this will be the end of Irish people. And even though Ireland is for Irish, let's say, I would say that they don't deserve to have their own independent state. I am from Poland, and let's say that we Poles were fighting to regain our independence in 1918, but we were not fighting killing Russians living in Warsaw or killing Germans living in Poznan. We were attacking and fighting with German soldiers. In 1918, let's say we were fighting, we were disarming German soldiers, and we were mostly fighting with, let's say, some kind of Russian soldiers and sometimes Ukrainians and Latvians. You see that you cannot have your own independence, as Palestinian Arabs assume, with such horrific, heinous behavior. You can only murder people, and doing even protest in the same day makes you a real barbarian. And this barbarity, because Arabs also have these tactics that they are talking about their issues, if honestly, if their issue is just and it is shown as being good, but when they are the perpetrators, they don't say anything or they completely lie. And this tactic is well known because everybody who is observing, let's say, Al Jazeera and all those Arabs, Muslims, Turks, Pakistanis, they know that they use these tactics, and these tactics are against them because they have in their own countries massive protest, massive violence, young men unemployed, blowing themselves up. They cannot create anything, any concrete education, administration, and so on, because they only on drugs. They say Allahu Akbar and they are blowing themselves. How can you create the administration, culture, civic society, civic government with such tactics? You cannot. So Muslims, leave those barbaric tactics behind you and create something new. Create something of a new, not aggressive, not horrific, not heinous, something which is pure, something which is good intentional, when you can create something good for yourselves. Because of this attack of Hamas, they are responsible for all those Palestinians being killed, because Jews officially they let's say they occupy Gaza, but in reality there were no Gaza soldiers from 2005. So Hamas is ruling, and Arabs are ruling the Gaza themselves. And none of those, let's say, 60,000 Palestinians would die if Hamas terrorists and Hamas Palestinian young men didn't want to kill everything they see. So Muslims, take this attack on Manchester, because we have earlier in 2016 attack. A Muslim put a bomb near when teenagers have a concert of Rihanna Grande, and they killed like 12, 20 teenage girls, and they said that they killed they killed crusaders. So you are lying, because you know that you don't kill them, you murder them. You murder them heinously. You murder them when they were playing, when they have their own good unique time, and they were all girls, teenage girls, with maybe one or two guys or something like that. So you just killed girls, and not with yourself, but you just murder them with a bomb. So what kind of morality you want to create? Learn your children, learn your elders, when you just did such a horrific, brutal behavior. Muslims leave that passage, that way of thinking and behaving, because it destroy all your ummah, all your culture, all your achievements as Muslims. It will just completely degenerate your way of thinking in every aspect, not only in political, in religious, but in every aspect. Let me know in the comments what do you think about this broad topic and issue.